A growing scandal involving Prince Harry and his last remaining genuine charity project, the Invictus Games.
Very apparent with the collapse of Archwell that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are definitely shoving off their former projects.
Point. Archwell, their charity effort, has not only changed its name from a
It's a bloodbath in Montecito for Archwell and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle as they have lost another staff.
Change the name from Archwell Foundation, okay, to a word that I really struggle to say.
There are questions being raised about royal finances as the House of Windsor prepares for a major audit examining property.
2 dates. Keep them in mind, because everything in this story comes back to the gap between them and what may have been happening behind the scenes during that time. The 14th of March, 2024. Meghan shares a black and white Instagram video. She's picking flowers, stirring something on a stove, surrounded by soft lighting and polished visuals. A cursive logo reads American Riviera Orchard, introducing her lifestyle brand with jam, honey, and a carefully crafted California image. The 3rd of May, 2024. California's Attorney General lists the Archwell Foundation as delinquent and orders the organization to stop soliciting donations and spending funds until the issue is resolved.
But is it really a charity project at all? Is it just being used as a money-making scheme?
Just 7 weeks separate these events. One venture appeared to be receiving major attention, while the charity faced administrative trouble that raised questions about oversight. Tonight, we're looking at documents, not rumors. That includes California records, federal tax filings, Charity Watch correspondence, and the December 2025 restructuring that drew fresh attention to how the organization was being managed. One question keeps showing up when the timeline is reviewed from start to finish. While Harry's name often dominated headlines and public debates, was someone else making key moves behind the scenes? This is a story about governance, filings, and decisions that can be traced through public records.
Boycott of the Invictus Games, saying there is something not sitting right with this charity. Charities that have something to hide should not be trusted, especially with so much NGO fraud being exposed in the last few years. And they are calling on Boeing and American Airlines to think twice before donating.
The documents are available, the dates are established, and the sequence speaks for itself. Start with the board. Who was responsible for overseeing the foundation and helping ensure proper stewardship of its resources? The answer was simple. 2 people, Meghan and Harry. That was the entire board. The complete governance structure of a foundation that was raising millions of dollars. Charity Watch, a nonprofit watchdog focused on charity accountability and financial health, addressed this directly. The organization noted that the foundation reports only 2 board members, a setup that falls well short of widely accepted nonprofit governance best practices. In simple terms, Charity Watch was pointing to a structure that differs from governance standards many nonprofits follow. Independent board members are often used to provide outside oversight and additional accountability. In this case, there were no independent trustees and no outside voices involved in board-level decisions. Think about what that can mean when major choices need to be made. If one board member wanted to focus significant time and attention on another project, the only person able to formally challenge that decision would be the other board member.
When they said Invictus is a scam, the veterans are being used for PR, privately funded faux trips with lavish accommodations and Meghan's merchandising schemes, that's not how charities work. Royal YouTube sensation, according to Taz, added, this is the very reason why everyone who originally worked on and set up Invictus no longer works there.
With just 2 people on the board, there was no independent vote or outside perspective representing donor interests. Because the founders also made up the entire board, the organization had limited internal checks beyond those two individuals. Supporters of larger boards often argue that independent members can help raise concerns before issues grow into bigger problems. A structure like this may operate smoothly when finances are strong and everything is running according to plan. But when financial pressures increase, questions about governance tend to attract much more attention. Now look at the numbers from the 2024 filing. Revenue was reported at about $2.1 million, while expenses reached roughly $5.1 million. That left the organization with a deficit of around $3 million for the year.
Since leaving the royal fold, the foundation has become a cash cow for Harry and Meghan, and no doubt some others who are involved. It's all bubbling to the surface. And it is bubbling to the surface.
Those figures appeared during the same period that Meghan's lifestyle brand was generating headlines and attracting widespread media coverage. Looking further back, the trend becomes even more interesting. In 2021, the foundation reported raising approximately $13 million. That was the period following the high-profile Oprah interview when Harry and Meghan were receiving enormous global attention. Public interest was high, and many supporters were eager to contribute to causes connected with the couple's charitable efforts. In 2021, Archwell reported raising about $13 million. The following year, that number dropped to roughly $2 million. Across the next 3 years combined, total donations were reported at around $9.5 million, still below the amount raised during that single peak year.
Final traces of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle from the British royal family are being erased, and this is far more significant than just the destruction of their former home.
Not only that, though, their main comms person just left. She didn't even last a year. That is the 11th PR person to have left.
For many charities, donations naturally decline after an initial surge of attention. What stood out here was how quickly the drop occurred, and the fact that contributions never returned anywhere near the 2021 level. That sharp shift prompted questions about donor confidence and long-term fundraising momentum. So where was the money going during the years when substantial donations were still being received? According to reported figures from 2023, Archwell brought in more than $5 million. Public filings indicated that about $1.3 million went directly toward charitable grants and programs. The remaining funds were allocated across operating expenses, staffing, consultants, administration, and other organizational costs. Media analyst Brian Glicklich offered a public assessment of how many observers viewed the foundation. He stated that the public sees it as a self-serving publicity mechanism for the couple and a means of platforming other money-making ventures. That was a named analyst giving his own interpretation of the foundation's role and public perception. Keep that phrase in mind. Money-making ventures. It becomes relevant when examining later questions about governance, spending, and organizational priorities. Now we get to the issue that drew even more scrutiny.
Look, there's been leaked financial details from the Archwell Foundation that's quite fascinating.
The Archwell Foundation received a delinquency notice from the state of California and has been ordered to stop.
On its federal Form 990, the annual tax document filed by nonprofits, Archwell indicated that its financial statements were independently audited by an accountant. That matters because Form 990 is an official filing completed under legal certification. An audit is not a vague goal or future plan. It is a specific statement that an independent review of the organization's finances has been conducted. Charity Watch requested access to that audit report. For watchdog groups, audited financial statements are among the most important documents available because they provide outside verification of how an organization reports and manages its finances. When questions arise, those records often become a key point of focus. Charity Watch's first request for the audit was sent on the 22nd of January, 2024. No response. A second request followed on the 6th of December, 2024.
Our costs and looking at our revenue, so income, it was pretty obvious to me that we had lost quite...
Was jealous of Dr. Sophie and who felt that Dr. Sophie...
Again, no response. Then came a third request on the 6th of January, 2026. Once more, silence. That meant 3 written requests over a 2-year period, without the requested audit being provided. The situation drew attention because the organization had indicated on its tax filing that an independent audit existed. Observers generally point to 2 possible explanations. One is that the audit existed and was complete, but the organization chose not to share it despite repeated requests. The other is that the audit was unavailable in the form described on the filing. Critics of the first explanation argue that if a clean audit were available, releasing it could help answer questions and strengthen public confidence. Choosing not to provide it after multiple requests would naturally raise additional questions rather than resolve them. The second possibility received more attention because of the continued lack of response. Charity Watch ultimately stated that Archwell did not meet its transparency benchmarks, and, as a result, the organization was unable to receive a rating from the watchdog group. That conclusion became part of a larger discussion involving governance, financial reporting, fundraising trends, and public accountability. Taken together, those issues fueled debate about the direction in which the foundation was being managed. Now return to the delinquency notice, because the timing is what caught many people's attention. On the 3rd of May, 2024, California authorities listed the Archwell Foundation as delinquent due to a filing-related issue. Reports indicated that the matter involved paperwork and a payment that had not been properly processed at the time. The delinquency itself became a headline, but many observers focused on the events leading up to it. Questions were raised about administrative oversight and whether warning signs had already been present before the notice was issued. Now move back 7 weeks earlier. On the 14th of March, 2024, Meghan introduced American Riviera Orchard, her lifestyle brand. The launch featured carefully styled visuals, flowers, food preparation, and branding designed to create a polished image tied to California living. The contrast between those 2 dates sparked discussion.
I think it's people get freaked out by tax returns. And I also think sometimes people are a little bit lazy. They hear things, they say, oh, Invictus Games, 4 Wounded Warriors, which sounds like the Wounded Warrior Games. And people think, oh, this must be great. And a lot of people are unclear how to read a tax return or to check stats. And so I think it was just very easy to say, oh, the Invictus Games, it's great. It does all this. And then, you start looking into it and you're like, hey, what the heck is going on here? Those 535 competitors had to pay their own way. They had to pay their own housing for the games. They had to pay for their own equipment.
On one side was a new commercial venture attracting major publicity and media coverage. On the other was a charitable organization facing compliance challenges, operating with a 2-person board, and later reporting a significant annual deficit. Both developments were connected to the same household and unfolded within a short period of time. Supporters viewed them as separate matters, while critics questioned whether priorities and resources were being balanced effectively. What made the timeline notable was not just the events themselves, but how closely they occurred together. One project appeared to be moving forward with coordinated launches and strong public visibility, while the other was facing growing scrutiny from regulators and watchdog groups. The contrast did not end there. According to reports, California registration issues surfaced again on the 15th of May, 2025. State records indicated that the most recent filing on record extended only through the end of 2023. That meant a second compliance-related issue within 2 years. At the same time, Meghan's lifestyle brand continued rolling out products and promotions on schedule. For critics, the repeated compliance problems raised questions about where organizational attention was being directed. Supporters, however, argued that the charity and the business venture were separate operations with different teams and responsibilities. Still, the timing became a major talking point. When similar administrative problems appear more than once, observers often begin looking for broader patterns rather than isolated mistakes. Now let's talk about James Holt, because his role is an important part of this story. Holt was involved from the early days of Harry and Meghan's public journey together. He was present during their 2018 wedding period and became one of the most trusted figures working alongside the couple. When they stepped away from royal duties and relocated to California in 2020, Holt remained part of the team. Over the following years, he helped manage operations through some of the biggest moments of their public lives. That included the Oprah interview, major media projects, public controversies, staff changes, and the continued development of Archwell.
And Harry and Meghan got a really nice vacation out of it with lots of adorational speeches and clapping and crowds gathered for them. So it was really odd. But I do think that people are starting to cotton on. Again, when we look at the numbers of corporate sponsors lining up for Birmingham, there really aren't that many, and we don't know who they are.
People familiar with the organization often described Holt as someone with deep institutional knowledge. Unlike outside commentators, he had first-hand experience working alongside Harry and Meghan through many of the events that later became global headlines. He stayed through the intense media attention surrounding the Oprah interview, the Netflix series, the memoir, ongoing public debates, leadership changes, and increasing scrutiny of the foundation's finances and governance. Then came December 2025. By that point, staff reductions had been reported, financial challenges were attracting attention, and Archwell was undergoing restructuring efforts. Around the same time, Holt chose to leave and return to the United Kingdom to focus on family life. What stood out to many observers was how quietly the departure happened. There was no major media campaign, no lengthy public explanation, and no detailed account of his years working within the organization. After 7 years, he simply moved on. For some commentators, the timing sparked speculation because his exit coincided with a period of transition inside the foundation. Others viewed it as a personal decision after years spent working in an exceptionally high-profile environment. Either way, Holt's departure marked the end of a long chapter. He had remained through nearly every major milestone, challenge, and public controversy connected to Harry and Meghan since their wedding era. 7 years of service, stretching from the royal transition to the California years, ended quietly at a moment when the organization itself appeared to be shrinking rather than growing. That timing became yet another detail that drew attention from people following the foundation's evolving story. James Holt was not the only senior figure to leave. During the same round of staffing changes, Archwell also lost its director of programs and operations, a key person involved in managing the foundation's charitable initiatives. Public filings showed the position carried a salary of roughly $146,000 per year.
Prince Harry, he's not responsible for these allegations in regard to African parks.
Should not be trusted, especially with so much NGO fraud being exposed in the last few years. And they are
The executive director departed as well. Those exits drew attention because they occurred during a period when the organization was presenting plans for its next phase and future growth. Over the years, reports have suggested that more than 20 staff members have left roles connected to Harry and Meghan's various operations. The turnover became a frequent topic among royal commentators and media observers. One royal source summarized the situation with a widely quoted remark: "They churn through staff faster than normal people churn through toilet paper." While clearly an opinion, the quote reflected the perception held by some critics who questioned why so many experienced employees eventually moved on. Many of those individuals arrived with strong professional backgrounds and high-level experience. Yet the steady stream of departures continued to fuel discussion about leadership, workplace dynamics, and long-term organizational stability. Then there was the situation involving Dr. Sophie Shandauka and Sintabale, the charity Harry co-founded in 2006 in honor of his mother. Shandauka was not an anonymous source or outside commentator. She served as chair of the organization and publicly described concerns she said arose during her time with the charity. According to her account, there was a request for the organization to respond to negative media coverage involving Meghan. Her response was direct and widely reported: "We are not setting a precedent by which we become an extension of the Sussex PR machine." That phrase, "an extension of the Sussex PR machine," gained attention because it came from the chair of a charity closely associated with Harry himself. Now moved to the 19th of December, 2025, and the Archewell restructuring announcement. The foundation revealed that it would transition into Archewell Philanthropies. The public message emphasized future opportunities, expanded charitable efforts, and a broader vision involving the family's philanthropic work. The language focused on growth, new possibilities, and a larger global impact. But at the same time, staffing reductions were taking place. Reports indicated that 3 employees were let go, accounting for more than half of the remaining workforce. The executive director departed, and the director of programs and operations also exited during that period. That combination of ambitious public messaging and significant internal downsizing quickly became a subject of debate among those following the organization's evolution. The numbers continued to raise questions. Donations reportedly fell from about $5.3 million to $2.1 million, while filings showed a deficit of roughly $3 million. At the same time, the requested audit had still not been publicly produced, and California compliance issues remained part of the public record. Critics argued that those figures did not resemble a period of expansion. When donations decline sharply and staffing levels are reduced, many observers see that as a sign of contraction rather than growth.
Charity demonstrates some similar vibes. So, guys, we are going to get into this latest breaking news today.
The most important thing about branding, and I'm in PR allegedly, is you get a brand, you stick to it. So it's
One detail that attracted particular attention involved the organization's shift toward a fiscal sponsorship model. Supporters of that structure often note that it can simplify administration and reduce operational burdens. Critics, however, point out that such arrangements may provide less publicly available financial detail than a standalone foundation structure. That debate became especially significant because the transition occurred while Archewell was facing questions about fundraising trends, governance practices, staffing changes, compliance matters, and transparency concerns. For some observers, the timing stood out. The organization was already dealing with scrutiny related to its finances and reporting, and then it moved toward a model that some viewed as providing less public visibility into future operations. Whether that shift was intended for efficiency, restructuring, or another purpose became a topic of discussion among commentators and nonprofit observers alike. The public announcement framed the change around family involvement and future philanthropic goals. The message emphasized a broader vision and continued charitable efforts moving forward. At the same time, critics argued that donations made to a charitable organization carry expectations of accountability and transparency. From that perspective, donors naturally want clear information about how funds are being managed and distributed. Questions about reporting obligations did not disappear simply because the organizational structure changed. Instead, the restructuring added another layer to an already active debate about governance and disclosure. When viewed together, the timeline became the focus of much of the discussion. The 14th of March, 2024, Meghan's lifestyle brand launches. The 3rd of May, 2024, Archewell is listed as delinquent by California authorities. 2024, public filings show a deficit of approximately $3 million. 2025, California registration issues emerge again. Throughout 2025, the lifestyle brand continues operating and launching products. December 2025, Archewell restructures into a different organizational model while staffing reductions take place. Supporters and critics draw different conclusions from those events. Supporters argue the challenges were administrative and ultimately addressed. Critics see a pattern involving declining donations, repeated compliance issues, unanswered transparency questions, staff departures, and organizational downsizing. What kept the conversation alive was how closely those events lined up on the calendar. The charity faced most of the regulatory and governance scrutiny, while the commercial brand continued moving forward with public launches and ongoing visibility. That contrast became one of the most debated aspects of the entire timeline. As questions continued to surround the charity,
Audit examining property arrangements and financial dealings. But
annual filings, they gave away 2.1 million. It's a really small foundation, but their expenses were more than 5.
Notice issued by California Attorney General Rob Bonta to Archewell Foundation said
the commercial side of the operation kept moving forward. Compliance issues, governance debates, transparency concerns, and financial scrutiny were all tied to Archewell. Meanwhile, Meghan's lifestyle venture continued evolving. American Riviera Orchard eventually became As Ever. Products were released, and new launches continued to generate attention. The contrast became difficult for many observers to ignore. On one side was a brand presenting a polished image through carefully planned marketing, social media, and product rollouts. On the other was a charitable organization facing ongoing questions about filings, oversight, and financial performance. Critics argued that the brand appeared to operate with strong focus and coordination, while the charity struggled with issues that repeatedly attracted outside scrutiny. Supporters, however, maintained that the two entities served different purposes and should not automatically be judged as one operation. There was also a broader reputational issue at play. For public figures, reputation can be a valuable business asset. When charitable activities generate negative headlines, those stories can affect public perception across other ventures connected to the same individuals. In March 2026, reports emerged that a Netflix investment connected to the As Ever brand had been withdrawn. Some commentators noted that this occurred during a period when questions about Archewell's finances and governance remained highly visible. Whether those developments were related remains unclear. Only the people directly involved in those business discussions would know the full details. Still, the timing became another point frequently highlighted by critics and media analysts. What keeps this story alive is that much of the discussion centers on public records rather than anonymous claims. The Charity Watch correspondence is on the record. The California delinquency notice is on the record. James Holt's departure is documented. Dr. Sophie Chandauka's public comments are documented. Various analyses and assessments from commentators are also available for review. Because of that, supporters and critics often return to the same source material, the filings, statements, and official records themselves. When the timeline is viewed in order, the sequence becomes clear. March 2024 brought the launch of Meghan's lifestyle brand.
Has to go to Birmingham this summer. He has to drum up some sort of business because at this point, A, it's just embarrassing. And B, yes, government funds are supposed to cover about half, but the other half are supposed to come from private companies and private individuals. And nobody's dropping a dime anymore because they are also saying, how come this costs so much?
May 2024 brought Archwell's delinquency notice. Those two dates, sitting just weeks apart, became a central focus for people trying to understand the larger story behind the headlines. The registration issue appeared again in May 2025, while the brand continued hitting its launch targets without interruption. Then, in December 2025, Archwell moved into a different organizational structure. At the same time, public scrutiny was intensifying. These are dates, filings, and documented events. They are part of the public record. They do not rely on rumors, anonymous sources, or speculation. They consist of forms, disclosures, requests, responses, and the absence of responses where questions remained unanswered. What makes the timeline so interesting is not that it proves anyone's intentions. It's that the sequence of events paints a picture of where attention, resources, and operational focus appeared to be concentrated over time. Looking at the records, several questions stand out. Was it the two-person board structure with no independent oversight? Was it the audit that was reported on a filing but never provided after multiple requests? Or was it the decision to restructure the organization during a period of heightened scrutiny? Reasonable people can look at the same documents and reach different conclusions. That's why the timeline continues to spark debate among supporters, critics, and nonprofit observers alike. At the end of the day, the story isn't about headlines, it's about the documented record and what people believe that record shows when viewed as a whole. Now it's your turn. Which part of this timeline stands out most to you, and why? Drop your thoughts and analysis in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please like the video, subscribe, and share it with others who follow these stories.